live. Everybody can see us. Hello.
Woo, hi. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Olaxis, which is the name of this panel. Welcome to Olaxis. So I guess it should be Welcome to Olaxis.
Yes. Good.
Yeah, we'll take it again. Welcome to Olaxis. I am James Introcaso. I go by he, him. And I am moderating this wonderful panel with the cast of the Burning Daylight, Burn Bryte actual play right here on the Roll20 channel. This is part of the amazing, incredible Gen Con online experience that we're having right now. And we are going to go around the table and introduce people. So tell me who you are and what you do in the industry, and also specifically what you are doing or who you are playing as part of this Burning Daylight stream. And Celeste, let's start with you.
Yeah, hey everybody, my name is Celeste Konowich. I am the GM for Burning Daylight, so I don't have a very cool character to tell you all about, but hey, it's me. I'm facilitating your stories. So every week on the Burning Daylight stream, Thursday evenings, you can catch us playing through this awesome module. When I'm not doing that, I am a game designer, streamer, and podcaster out there in the world. I am the DM for the actual play podcast Venture Maidens, which is a D&D podcast. We stream alternating Wednesdays. And then, yeah, I'm always writing one of your DM's Guild adepts. So just follow me on Twitter at @cconowich if you want to, hear more about that. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about space today. And I'm very excited about it.
Yes, absolutely. And Celeste, you play some of my favorite characters on the show. So you have many characters in your brain just for Burning Daylight, not to mention all of the other streams that you do.
Thank you.
Yes. And moving on right underneath me here, Jess, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jess. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I am a writer and editor. Right now, I'm an editor for D&D. I also have a D&D actual play podcast called D20 Games, which is a lot of fun, family friendly, and we're also doing a panel this weekend. For this show, I play Lou, who is a driftling, so they're able to constantly change their shape, which is so much fun. Also, yeah, definitely Wanda, best character that you play, Celeste. Everybody loves Wanda. Wanda's the absolute greatest. Also, I guess technically you do play Raindrop, my pet blip, and that's very near and dear to my heart, obviously.
That is true love.
Yeah. Don't sell yourself short. You play so many characters.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, that is very true. And everyone does love Wanda. Does Wanda love everyone? I don't know. We'll find out.
It's complicated.
And moving right down the row here, Eugenio, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Eugenio. Some of you may know me as DM Jazzy Hands. In Burning Daylight, I play Atash, our Zavoy friend. They are a 5-foot-long, pure white slug person who doesn't particularly love living in their own body, and so they inhabit the bodies of corpses and use them to get around and accomplish things. I use he, him pronouns. Atash uses they, them pronouns. And what else? So I'm the DM and producer of another actual play podcast. So many of us here on this show. Mine's called The Last Refuge. You can check us out at DND Last Refuge. I also have a few adventures out on the DM's Guild. I stream on my Twitch channel. You can find all the things that I do at my website, which I think is in chat, because I'm not going to tell you how to spell my name. You can just click on the link.
Excellent. Darcy, let's go ahead with you. And Darcy is also one of the designers of Burn Bryte, we should mention. So go ahead, Darcy, please introduce yourself.
Heck yeah, I'm really excited to be here. So I'm Darcy. I use she, her pronouns. By day, I am a community relations coordinator for Monty Cook Games. I am recovering from my years in the snailology, training mines. So I used to be a scientist, and I brought a lot of weird biology to Burn Bryte and had a lot of fun helping design this lovely game. So I'm very excited to be here. in our campaign, I play Ola. He is a Cthulhu, grizzled old warrior, but, he's leaving the days of violence behind him. And he just wants to bring the team together and really keep us happy and keep Wanda the ship as a nice, gentle, lovely place to live around. But dang, Olaxis is kind of a dangerous place to be. And so as peace-loving as Ola tries to be, perhaps his skills as a warrior will have to keep coming back into play. So happy to be this lovely Uncle Iroh style bug man.
Yes, excellent. And Naseem, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, why not? I'm Naseem, and I am playing the horde of 100,000 insects, Roarnan, named Vamfam. And we are very curious little bugs. We want to learn everything about everything and dismantle the daylight cult and create our own horde, massive horde once again, reunite the rest of the Roarnan in the galaxy once more. And outside of the game, I'm also a player on the Venture Maidens podcast along with Celeste, and actor in theater and film and stuff here in Los Angeles. That's me.
Excellent. That is amazing. And this is an incredible group of people that has been assembled. If it has not become obvious yet, you should definitely check out the show, which airs every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific time, right here on this channel, there's episodes on YouTube. You can watch from episode 0 up to episode 4, which aired last night. And before we dive into the game and the stream, I do want to let people know that right now, Roll20 is raising money and matching donations for people who donate using the Tiltify link, which is, if you scroll down, you can see there's a big Code 2040 banner. You can click on it. It'll take you there. For every $100 raised, not only does Roll20 also donate $100. So every dollar you donate, it's like you're donating an extra one. That's pretty cool. You also are going to find in the chat that we'll do a Burn Bryte bundle giveaway. So whenever we raise $100, the awesome and amazing moderators in chat, who are lovely and we love them, are going to make sure that somebody wins a free copy of this game we're talking about. So that's pretty cool too. So you get to help people out, you get to double your donation, and you might just win a copy of Burn Bryte. So that's great. Let us, and Code 2040, if you don't know, is a great charity that raises money to help Black and Latinx technologists get started in a field dominated by a lot of white dudes. So it is a really important cause, and it is just a great organization that Roll20 feels very, very passionate about. So let's talk about Burn Bryte. So Burn Bryte is a role-playing game that is science fantasy. It takes place in the Olaxis galaxy, which is the last galaxy in existence. There is this phenomenon called the burn, which looks like an orange borealis effect that surrounds the galaxy on all sides and slowly closes in. And as it envelops planets and people and space stations, those things are never seen or heard from again. There's a lot of theories on what the burn is and what caused it, but no one is exactly sure. This causes all sorts of problems, right? We've got refugee crises, we've got land wars, we've got wars over resources, we've got corporate greed. And so we also have, we think maybe the burn kind of advances erratically, but about 100 or so years left. So we can't just suddenly devolve into chaos, right? Our children are going to inherit this world. And so that is the main crux of Burn Bryte, is that you play characters who, despite all odds, dare to hope and dare to do the right thing, because it is the right thing to do, while the rest of the world might be panicking and trying to fight for survival. So it's a post-apocalyptic story. Well, not post-apocalyptic. It's an apocalyptic story with hope. So that is sort of the central idea of Burn Bryte. And also, I should mention, I also worked on the game. I'm one of the designers as well. I want to get everybody's kind of opinion about the world. What did you like about the world? What has helped you tell the story, and what do you find sort of unique about it? And Celeste, let's start with you, because you were the first person to get the book. You assembled this cast, like, you said, these are the people I would like to play with, and they're all here, which is great. So tell me a little bit about, like, what do you like about Olaxis?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I got this book, and I just sat down and I basically read through it in one sitting because I couldn't put it down. I was just going through the core book, and I remember I messaged James after this. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Just because the way the world is set up, it has just enough lore to pull you in and make you interested and invested in the themes of the story right away. But there's also so much open space to determine, the stories that you're going to tell within this setting. So, I mean, the themes that are incorporated, the themes of hope, like the idea of playing in a world that is going to burn, in this very, like, tangible way, the world is ending, and how people are dealing with that, and exploring the themes of, what that looks like, what those next 100 years are going to look like, was just so intriguing. Because in most game settings, maybe over the course of the campaign, you are dealing with a world-ending event. You are trying to stop the evil wizard from pulling the plane of chaos, or, whatever. But that's end game stuff, usually, in these big games. So flipping that on its head and starting with, yes, this is already the thing. So how do we function with this as already being true, was so intriguing for me, just to learn and play in this setting already right off the bat. That gripped me. And then the fact also that the book leaves open so much space, like the fact that the burn is never explained, like it's not quantified by the rules or by the mechanics, leaves it so open to making your own stories about solving the burn, discovering what it is, how do we counteract it. It's just a setting that had so much intrigue and options already built into it. And the fact that, there are hundreds and hundreds of these planet systems and sapient species out there to explore. And, what you do with your time is just so open, but also feels so important every step of the way, was the thing that really intrigued me the most about this setting, and Burn Bryte in particular.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. I have never really heard it put that way, that like your time is so valuable, and so you should be doing valuable things with your time. It's really a very great way to summarize this game. Darcy, you had a hand in forging Olaxis. What do you think as far as like the elements of the game that were brought into this? What did you feel was really important in this story that we get across?
Ooh, yeah, I think, when we were first talking about the first conversations that all the four designers were having about sketching this out, really before pen to paper, I remember us talking about some, issues in the world today, right? We want to make a game that gives people hope, that's about things we love, like space and science fantasy, and speaks to the people who will be playing that game, right? And so at the time, I think the one of the major news items and something going on in our minds was the story of refugee crises, right? Global warming is causing, disrupted environments, and it's making it harder for people to sort of live where they're at. There's displacement from war, from other things. So I think we were thinking a lot about, these stories of displaced people and, the competing impulses between humans to reach out a hand and, make that table longer, or do we build a bigger fence, right? Do we let people in, or do we try to protect what's ours? And I think that's a story that can be mapped onto refugee crisis, can be mapped onto, global warming issues. But I think, even now, right, it's coming out as we're having this sort of global stressors about, who is bringing what where, and who do we, trust. And so I guess I'm really appreciative that it seems like the themes that the game ended up asking are really map onto stories that we're going to be experiencing over and over again. And I hope that, the game is really built to say, in the face of adversity, and lots of competing interests, choose hope. And I think that's a great message that's going to keep being relevant to players, useful and maybe cathartic to sink into. I think it's very inspiring. So I like that aspect of it. And it's been fascinating to see how resonant it still feels, even though there are different sort of worldwide events going on right now. So.
Yeah, that's it's certainly a comment we keep getting from people, like, oh, this is so poignant for right now. And well, we started like 4 years ago, so
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Nassim, what do you enjoy about Olaxis and sort of telling a story in this universe?
To like kind of piggyback off of what Darcy said, all those scenarios that create this sort of feeling of displacement and great feeling of loss for so many of the species and the races here. I think that's what drew me to my character of the Rornan so much, is because they've already lost everything. They don't know how to really identify as an individual when they've been part of this hive mind horde in their own world for so long. And that felt like such a great challenge to dive into. And how is it that you can possibly want to continue to survive when everything feels so lost and hopeless? That's a real struggle. It's easier to just give up and be like, you know what, I'm going to go run amok across the galaxy now because everything is ending anyway, so why not? But it just felt like a interesting way to bring your own character's story path into the light, and how it informed the sort of morality you follow, or if you have a sense of morality. It was a challenging setting, and I like that.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, thank you for that, and I'm glad that like you're embracing that challenge. I do want to let people know that we just unlocked a bundle in chat, so that's very exciting. Can we unlock more? Let's see. Keep going. Raise that money for Code 2040. So Jess, how about you? What do you like about Olaxis? Because you come from a place, a storytelling background, right? You're a writer. You play on D20 games. You know a lot of you do a lot of amazing things. So it was a big compliment that you wanted to come play in Olaxis. What draws you to the galaxy?
Very similar to what a lot of other people have been saying. I really like, when I'm playing an RPG, I like playing more of a hero type. And even when I'm GMing, I don't let the players I play with play evil aligned characters. I personally do not find that fun. Like, if I wanted to play in a world where everything was terrible and so all of the people were terrible, I could just walk outside. Like, that is not fantasy to me. That is real life. When people are just bad all the time, like, that is just what life is like. And that's not fun for me. So a lot of what other people have been saying about like that everything is going so wrong, but there's still people who are like, but we can do something good. Like, even knowing our time is limited, we can still do something that is good. We can like act with hope. I always love games like that. And similar to like D20 games, that's kind of the same deal there, is that like everything we do, we try to avoid combat as much as possible. Like, everything we do is very much like, except for the one time Celeste was a guest, which we don't need to get into because it was a huge deal. And there were a lot of broken hearts after that arc, I'll just say. Celeste.
Sorry.
Wow.
Kat told me to. She's like, don't be afraid to fight. And I was like, all right.
That was such a high stakes combat and we weren't expecting it. Okay, anyway. But that's definitely something that I really like about this system, is that so much of that attitude is just like built into it directly. So much of that just very hopeful storytelling is part of the system, whereas there are other systems where you kind of have to like force that in yourself or like choose to play the game that way. This one is one of very few, I think, that is very much like, hey, everything is bad, but not for you, right? Like, you're gonna make it work. And that's like what your character is. And that is something that I personally love so much about this. And then another thing that I just love about it is I've played other like sci-fi science fantasy RPGs before, and I did not like the like spaceship mechanics or like being in a spaceship or spaceship battle, and I love the spaceship battle in this one. Like the last night was so much fun, except for the part where Wanda was in a lot of trouble. But in terms of actually like playing through that spaceship battle, it was the most fun I've ever had, like playing through a spaceship battle in a game that allows you to fight in spaceships. And so that also really draws me to this particular system.
That is music to my ears, and it was incredible. We're going to talk more about that battle too, for sure, because we've already got some questions from chat about how do spaceship mechanics work and things like that. But first, I just want to hear from Eugenio about the things that you like about Olaxis.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I was going to say, sort of as we went down the row, I was like, oh, yep, that's what I was going to say. Oh, that's what I was going to say. So I'll sort of continue the chain and say that I like Jess, sort of generally don't super gravitate towards sci-fi and space game systems. I grew up with Star Trek and Star Wars, and I love all of that sort of thing, and I love future technology and stuff like that. But I've never been super drawn to space and sci-fi games, and I think Burn Bryte and Olaxis, and I think the art, I have to say, I guess we don't have any of the art up on this overlay, but the art is so beautiful and evocative and has a lot to do with what I'm about to say, which is that in addition to sort of the way that it's written, in that, you know, the player characters are heroes, and they are trying to, in their own way, make what remains of the universe's time like worth living in. It's also this whimsical, fun science fantasy world, and I think the balance of the sci-fi and the fantasy in this game and in this setting is chef's kiss. There is magic, but it's not your typical high fantasy kind of magic, so it feels technologically rooted and space and science rooted. There are fantastical creatures that have, you know, their sort of look is very whimsical and fantasy, but you can tell really, really sort of gritty, spacey stories with those fantastical creatures if you want. You know, one of the sapient species that players can play, which none of us are playing, is called a glean, and they're these very cute feathered aquatic creatures, right, that look like they're straight. I mean, they look like, you know, like cousin of a flumph, but their society and their species history is so beautifully evocative and so definitely tied into a science fiction and spacey sort of setting. I just think the balance between those things is beautiful. And for someone like me who, you know, likes cool tech but has never been super drawn to science fiction games, I think this is a really, really good way to bridge that gap.
Excellent. Well, since I started, or I came to you last, Eugenio, I'll start with you first for this question.
Sure.
So in Burn Bryte, you know, it is a skill-driven game. You have 18 skills, similar to a game like Fate, you know, where you have all of these different skills, or perhaps a Monty Cook game, if I may be so bold. But the idea, right, is that you have these skills. Each skill has a die size associated with it: D4, D6, D8, D10, D12. If you have a D12, you're really good with it. If you have a D4, you're not so good with it. And then whenever you tackle a task has a complexity, and the complexity varies between 2 and 7. It's usually between 2, 3, or 4. And you roll that many dice when you use that skill, right? So if you make an athletics test, you have a D8 in it, the complexity is 3, you roll 3D8. If you have doubles, you fail, right? If you have any dice that show the same number as other dice, you fail. Otherwise, you succeed, because the assumption is you are heroes and you're competent, and so you're good at these things. However, if you fail a skill roll, you don't just fail, you make things worse. In the tradition of great science fantasy comedy, like moments in Star Wars and Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor, when people fail and it's like, oh, we just made things 1,000 times worse by trying to do something. That's the effect we wanted to have, right? And so that's sort of the basics of mechanics. There's other things in there. Nova points are this reason for you to use the skills you're not as good at. And the reason for that is because we let players justify the skill that they want to use to the GM. It's every argument you've ever had about in D&D why you should be allowed to use acrobatics to climb a cliff instead of athletics, right? It is that, but we said,
Yes.
here's a game mechanic that lets you do whatever you want, players.
Yeah.
How have you found that at the table? Because it is different than some other games, and especially, you know, big roll a d20 to see if you succeed or fail kind of games.
It is different, and I love it. I've been thinking about this today because this is one of the things that I knew I definitely wanted to talk about. And I Celeste and I got to do an interview about about the game a few days ago, and we talked about this a little bit, and it's been percolating ever since then. I love the balance in this game of open-ended, narrative-focused mechanics, right? It doesn't feel as crunchy as someone in the chat already mentioned, like a Starfinder or a Pathfinder, right? But it also doesn't feel so loosey-goosey and open that I have nothing to latch on to, right? I don't have, if there is some sort of conflict in how something should work, there is enough there for me and the GM to grab onto and be like, okay, this is probably how this should work, and the book says so, right? I love this balance. I know some people love super loosey-goosey games that, like, maybe you roll a dice once and it's all about just telling the story. I know some people love 3.5 D&D where there's a million math problems to do, you know, every couple of minutes. And I think this is a brilliant balance. I've had so much fun figuring out, you know, what skills to use. And last night, for the first time during our ship combat, I was like, I'm going to do this, and here's the skill I'm going to use, and here's why. And before Celeste could say anything, I was like, you know what? That's a dumb reason, and I don't like it. So we're going to use a different skill. And this system, like, is so good at that. It gives you enough to grab mechanically. It gives you enough encouragement to not try and, like, power game everything and always use your D12 skills, right? I know some of us in particular, like, work real hard to get as many Nova points per session as we can, which just makes the narrative and our skills so much more interesting and exciting. I think it's great. There's no math, which I mentioned to somebody in the chat. Like, I know that can be a barrier for particularly some new players or some old players. I don't know. I like math, but I know a lot of people don't. So there's not really math for players. That's great. The rules and the way that tests work is so clear. And I mean, the four of us have had so much fun explaining why we want to use the skills that we do. And
Absolutely.
I don't know. I know I keep talking about balance, but I really think this game brings a lot of different ideas, makes them better, and puts them into one, mechanically and narratively.
Awesome. Yeah, Jess, how about you? How have you felt about the mechanics going into this game?
So similar to the, like, hope aspect for, like, role playing, I like that this is basically built into the game, a thing that I was already doing, which is that, like, I so often when I play other games, we do get into those arguments of, like, well, I want to use this skill because of this. And there's always someone at the table who's like, no, that skill says this. And so this is what you use it for. But when I GM, I'm basically like, yeah, if you have a reason, do it. Like, roll your die. What do I care? Like, tell me how it works and you can do it. And so I love that that is just built into this game. So there's no argument. Like, there are times when it's sort of like, oh, I guess, you know, in second thought, this doesn't make much sense. But I love having the opportunity to say, like, well, I want to do this thing, but when I do it, I'm going to do it, like, with a flourish. So I'm going to use, like, performance to do this, even though it really is more like an athletics type thing. I love having the opportunity to do that. I love that that's built in. And also, I do love that, like, generating those Nova points means that I'm not just sticking myself to, like, like, these are my two best skills. So I'm basically just going to find ways to make it about these two things all the time. Because I want to generate those Nova points, I'm always like, all right, how can I make this, like, talking to someone be a power check? Like, I love that that's just built into the game, that just, like, fun variety is so much. It's so enjoyable. I really like that aspect of the skill checks.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That makes me feel very good, because I know you and I have talked offline about, like, how you don't love combat in games. And so hopefully,
Yes.
you know, the fact that you can, in combat, use skills that are not your melee and ranged skills, right? You can use other skills if you want to. Hopefully also helps the person who does want to be able to talk down their enemies and things like that.
Definitely.
So, yeah, that's great. Nassim, let's talk a little bit about the mechanics here. I know you and I have talked about this before, but if you would indulge the audience again to tell them what is it that you enjoy about the Burn Bryte mechanics?
Jess really said it. I mean, like, I love that it encourages role play when you want to. It's tied together completely. Like, my character isn't very much of a fighter. He wants to find other ways to bring a situation resolved. And so, for example, I tried to, in a practice session, put out a fire in an engine using empathy because I had been set on fire before. And I thought that was amazing. Just like, I understand what you're going through. Please be okay. Like, whatever image that looks like in your head, you can make it come true if it makes sense for your character, no matter what skill you choose to roll with. But beyond just the skill rolls and everything, I really love the space battles too, and the mechanics of that, and how it seems so hopeless in the middle of it, but there's still actually so much you can do with the MI space and the evasive maneuvers and everything being adjacent, and you can kind of interact with them as long as you're adjacent to another sector of the ship or the outer space. It makes working in like a 3D space so much more not simple, but more simple, I guess. Yeah, it at the first time I tried it, I think I was so lost in like, where is up, where is down, can I go up and down, what's the plane that we exist on? But having the mechanics of the actual space battle be a little more simplified and like, okay, as long as it's in the foreground or the near ground, or you're adjacent to that fore or aft side, that makes it a lot easier to conceptualize and visualize what you're actually doing in space.
Yes, excellent. That's good. It worked. Darcy, you and I have played games at conventions before, and when you were introducing me to how Cypher works, you said my players are all about making up crazy BS because they're a-holes.
Beautiful a-holes.
Yes, yeah, and that you loved that as a GM, right? That was your sort of, you spoke about them with affection.
Yes.
And how much you love that. And I know that this idea of being able to use the skills that you want to use to do the thing you want to do is something that I know you really pushed hard for in the design. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you think that is important.
Yeah, so I've run a lot of games for people new to RPGs, and it is one of my favorite things in life to do. I live for seeing someone, go from anxiety over looking at a character sheet and funny dice to, wait, I can do anything, and the eyes getting big, right? So I think one thing I really have liked about games that let you really embrace kind of wild creativity and have mechanics that ask you to be creative first and then sort of justify it with mechanics and hook the machine onto your weird ideas. I think that really lets new players flourish. At least that's what I've seen at my tables. And I think when we started designing this, we really wanted this to be a game that would be super fun for people who've been playing games forever, but also something that captured the imaginations and was accessible to people new to RPGs. And I think this is one of the ways that we were able to do that. And, there's the skill side of that, but I love how kind of conditions work too, right? Narratively, Celeste is okay, I'm a bug man. I've hooked onto another bug man. We're sort of trying to defend ourselves around these other people. We've interlocked our carapaces. And so how mechanically, in different games, there might be a mechanical weird, status that you have to go look up the specific status and see exactly how mechanically that works. Here, it's give it a condition. I don't have to go looking in the book. I can empower my player's choice to do a thing that makes narrative sense and is cool and creative, and I want it to matter mechanically, and I have really flexible mechanics to just slap that on, let you have mechanical benefits, and have a mechanical way of saying, thumbs up, you did it good, I'm glad you're engaging with the narrative, go to town. So I think it really came out, like, I'm so happy how it came out. And there are many ways that it looks somewhat like Cypher System. It in certain ways looks really different. I think it's achieving some of the things I love about my usual system of choice, the Cypher System, but does them in really different ways. So I think it came out fabulously.
That's awesome. That's excellent. That's excellent. So Celeste, we've heard now the player side. They really like the game. Is it a challenge for you as a GM when people are saying, I would very much like to do this BS with my skills? Is that hard for you? Is that easy for you? Does it feel like it takes the pressure off? Does it add more on? Like where do you find, and not just that aspect of the system, but the whole system overall, kind of, how has it been running for you?
Definitely. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, the majority of my experience has been with Dungeons and Dragons. I've been playing that for like 12 years at this point, but I have played lots of other systems. And this experience with Burn Bryte has been a joy. But definitely like a weird creative, like left turn sometimes. So in combat, when somebody's like, oh, I want to attack them with my social skill by like, yelling rude things at them. And I'm like, yes, because the rules are like, yes, that works. And you're like, okay, cool. And like, what does that look like? How do I narrate that has definitely been a challenge to do and to facilitate, but it's been so much fun to do that, to step outside of that box, the very standard RPG A plus B, equals this, and 5 damage. So stepping outside of that and really thinking about how to, narrate and support these moments with storytelling that makes sense has been it's honestly just been a delight, because seeing, social and mental skills, the way they cause damage, or incorporating things like story paths, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more. Like the leveling mechanic in this game is all about actually going on sort of these B plot stories, while you are traveling through your A plot line. So, turning these mechanics on and really, giving them a light to shine has been a joy as part of Burn Bryte, because there definitely are things that you don't see in your standard, TTRPGs. But like Darcy also mentioned, there are so many great tools given to you by the rules to reward creativity in a way that feels meaningful. So like I can give people, negative or positive conditions that, make rolls easier or harder. That's one option I have. I can also give people advantages in combat. So, if they do something that maybe, just sets people up for success, but isn't, your direct like hack and slash action, I can reward people with advantages. Items in this game do have special effects and they can deal damage. So that's another reward I can give people. So there's lots of tools and ways to reward creative action and creativity that I feel very well supported. When we are going, on different rails that I'm not used to, I do have these rewards to hand out as well. So I'm not scared, in that moment. I don't have to panic when somebody wants to deal damage, with their suave check. I can actually go to the list of like, oh, here are the cool rewards that are unique to this game and unique to doing such a wild thing, with your skills.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's definitely a lot of fun to watch you all. And last night, I was a little worried, right? Because I thought like, oh boy, like everybody's going to be tired from Gen Con. There's a lot happening, and they're going to tackle ship combat, and like, how's this going to go? And it went fantastically. It went amazing. Celeste, you did an amazing job running it. The players, you totally embraced it. It was just so much fun. So that brings me to the first question from the chat. Tall Squall says, I keep hearing about ship combat. Can we give a quick overview? Is it more like a skill challenge or Jaegering the ship with its own stats? So I think, Celeste, Celeste, I'm going to throw it over to you. How is ship combat? What's it like from your perspective running it last night?
Yeah, so something I really appreciate about this game is usually in sci-fi systems, you have your hand-to-hand combat rules and then you have your ship rules, and they are wildly different. So as a GM, you have to learn and manage two entirely different set of mechanics that can be a real pain in the butt. But luckily for Burn Bryte, what I really enjoy is that the ship combat mechanics are the exact same as hand-to-hand combat mechanics, except with a few more options that you can add on. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel as a GM when you do have a spaceship combat. All of the mechanics and the interactions work the same way mechanically, and they do it. All the additional options are very, very logical that tap into the same exact kind of skill challenges and roles. So, if you're in a hand-to-hand situation and you want to use a melee skill to hit somebody with a lightsaber, very cool. I mean, sorry, a laser sword, not a lightsaber. Whoops.
Disney's sneaking up behind us right now.
Yeah. What you do is, you set that complexity and you use your skill to accomplish the task. And it's exactly the same way in ship combat. If you have the turret on the ship, you run up to it, you make a skill challenge to see if you hit something outside the ship. So it's a very easy way to translate from both systems. But in addition, one of the coolest parts of Burn Bryte, I feel like, is that, you make your ship together during your cast creation. So you get to decide what cool tools, which are called modules in this game, are incorporated onto your ship. And so you decide together, what kind of weaponry you want to have on the ship. If you do want to have additional, cryo freezers for bodies, or like hull gunk to protect your ship from, from breaches, things like that. So the ship already very much feels like yours, and there's a certain this is our ship and we know how to use it, when combat begins, that feels really natural and easy. But in addition, what's really cool about ship combat here is if you do have an enemy ship, firing at you, yes, your ship can take damage, but that's only one of several options for environmental hazards that can happen when you're fighting in space. So what I really like about it is the stakes feel really high, because you're not just getting peppered, with laser shots from someone else. Sometimes a hole rips open in the side of your ship and you're getting pulled into space. Sometimes things set on fire and all of a sudden, your gun turret is blazing and you have to put it out before you can use it again. And what's great about, Roll20 is that they've built in these consequence tables for you. So during the game, whenever a hit goes off on the ship, I get to roll on this table and it tells me exactly how things get bad. So in addition to just, running around in the normal things you would think of during space combat, like moving the ship and firing, you're also dealing with these environmental hazards. So the stakes are really high and there's lots of options for you to do, but the options all make sense and it's not reinventing the wheel. So that's sort of a little overview on spaceship combat.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah, that's great. And so for the players last night, one of the design goals with Burn Bryte was I do not like in a science fiction game or a science fantasy game where there's the pilot character, right? Who it's they do nothing for 3 sessions, and then for half of one session they do everything while everybody else sits back, and then they do nothing again, right? And so I wondered, last night, obviously that's come up a couple times in the comments already about how the play went and everything. Did you all feel like you were part of the combat and you could still do what you wanted to do with your skills and that kind of thing? And I'll just sort of throw it out there, and whoever wants to answer can.
Yeah, I did. And I'll start because I actually, as we were going into it and we started sort of planning our first round of combat together, the 4 of us, it quickly came to my attention that because Atash had lost their body that they had been using in the backstory, that they had been using to sort of be the engineer, the pilot, they'd lost that body. And so they'd lost some of those, the knowledge of some of those things. And I started to get nervous because it became clear that Atesh wasn't going to be in the pilot seat, and they probably weren't going to be in the gun turret, and they aren't really good enough at computers while they're in their own body to deal with Wanda like Vamfam was going to. And I was sort of like, oh, I think I might be like the supernumerary who runs around and like when there's a hull breach or when there's a fire, like I'll deal with that, but I might not really have much to do in this combat. False. And again, it comes back to the way that the skills work, right? So there is a secondary place where you can not pilot the ship with fine controls, but you can move the ship around. And so I was able to run back there, and Ola, Darcy's character, was our main pilot, but I could shove the ship around to avoid the space tentacles every now and again.
It was critical.
It turned out to end up being really important, but I also did serve that supernumerary function because we had a hull breach in one sector, so I went and I sealed that up. All of this to say, like, again, the mechanics are so easily understandable and fleshed out enough that things are clear, but open-ended enough that, like, unless you try real hard to not have anything to do, you can find something to do during ship combat. There are enough stations, there are enough things that are happening, right? And you can really, like, dive into, well, I'm on a spaceship, it is being rocked by space tentacles. What would I actually do? I would run around and try and put out fires if I'm not in the pilot seat. I would run around and try and goose the engines if we're trying to outrun the thing. And so that sort of nervousness about, oh, I may not have much to do this episode, turned around so quickly, and I had a blast.
That's excellent. Yeah. And so that's great that you sort of felt the like, okay, I can be useful in this situation, right? My character is able to do heroic things and still be part of this process. So that's really good. And it does, like Celeste said, it works similar to normal combat. There's just more that can happen. So in the middle of your combat, it looked dire there for a little while. I thought Wanda, I was like, whoa, this is it for Wanda. And I don't know what Celeste is going to do if Wanda bites it, because that's a fan favorite right there, right? So what did you all... what did you think? Like, did it feel like the stakes were raised the way it did on kind of the audience side?
Yes.
Oh God, yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really, really fun. So that brings me to the next question, which comes from T Square. So T Square wants to know, how would you recommend pitching Burn Bryte to other TTRPG players to get them interested to make the switch? And also had another question about, is this a good starting place for someone new to RPGs? So let's go ahead and we can sort of go around there. You can answer both or one. Is it how would you get people on board? And do you think it's a good first game for somebody? And Jess, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think this is a great first game for somebody. So similar to Darcy, I used to run a lot of games for like first time players. Really like until everything shut down and we couldn't go anywhere, I was doing a lot of that. But even right before the world shut down, I was starting to think about like, how could I start running more games online, just because the store that I used to run games at was like 40 minutes away from me and I didn't want to make that drive anymore. But like, this is a great game. I mean, partially because it's already built into Roll20, so it means that I don't have to do a lot of work to like get it set up for players. I can really just dive right in with them. But like, as soon as I started playing, I was thinking, this is fantastic for new players. The way it's built into Roll20, the way that like all of the mechanics work, the way everything is laid out feels very easy to get into to me, especially because like I play a lot of different systems, but I also have a lot of trouble starting a new system. Like once I get into it, I can usually get into it pretty quickly, but I have so much trouble picking up a new system for the first time. And there was something about this one that like, as soon as I started, I was like, I have a question about, like here's where I click to find the answer. Like, okay, well now I have a question about, right here, I just click this now. How easy is that? And I think that helps a lot to make this very accessible to beginners. So even that is something that I would use as a selling point for people who are looking to switch to something else, is that it's not nearly as intimidating as some of the other games out there where it feels like you have to learn another language in order to really be able to learn that, because learning a new language takes years, and sometimes that's what it feels like when you are learning a new TRPG, that there's so much to it, it just feels so overwhelming. But for this one, I feel like it's so much easier to just like make that switch. If you've already been playing games, there's a lot of stuff that feels very intuitive, and if you've never played anything before, I feel like the way everything is laid out is it's easy to find everything for whatever questions you have.
Awesome. That's great. And I do want to throw out there that we are giving away 2 copies now of Burn Bryte in the chat. And it looks like we're possibly close to a third.
Only $18 away in donations from raffling off a third copy.
That sounds pretty cool. And if you donate $18, it's like you're donating 36 because of Roll20's matching. So that's cool too. So Darcy, how would you sell this to somebody to convince them, like, hey, maybe give Burn Bryte a try?
Yeah. So if you're a GM and you're trying to pitch to your players, I have my own pitching to GMs, but I think that everything that's been said so far, big thumbs up. I guess that like one thing that one feature that might appeal to your players is that we had briefly mentioned the kind of story path system, and I think that can be a big draw. So I think one of the selling points is that if your players I would see, are your players interested in having really character focused stories, right? Do they want to make it? Are they interested in cool space fantasy? Do they like spaceships? I feel like that's a good first question. If so, hey, when you think about your favorite science fantasy, like movies and TV shows, lots of them are really great because they have these character arcs, right? And if you're playing your Mass Effect games, right, having your team have all these little side stories around the bigger story, I think that Burn Bryte does a really good job capturing that. And it's not like those side stories are taking your time away from the game itself, which some systems can kind of do. Those side stories are important to making your character better and be more powerful and to help your team. So having your side stories that might go positively for you or might go really badly, right? You might take a story path about having a rival and you might end up losing or winning or besting your rival. And either of those options are mechanically rewarded and push your story forward. So I think if someone is, I think one of the pitches would be this kind of character focused mechanics and advancement that is really cool and might perk your players' ears up. And then, yeah, I think that was what my pitch would be. I have a cat.
Yes. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Also, you can be a cat person in Burn Bryte, so that's cool.
You sure can. Thank you, Chewy, for that reminder.
So yes, Nassim, what do you think? Do you think this would be a good first game for people?
Absolutely. I already said the praises to you before about how simple and easy the character creation, just getting started is fun. And that's completely new to me because I've been playing also like Celeste D&D for decades now. And only in the past maybe year or 2 years have I started to play other systems, being lucky enough to be invited to other shows and learn a new system. And though there's always that learning curve, there were some that I feel like even by the last session, I never fully grasped how it worked. I was just kind of skating along and letting the GM tell me if I succeeded or not. But this one, I got so quickly. And just after one session, I was like, all right, this makes sense. I got it now. I feel like I can take on any scenario and know how to lead what my character is going to do on my own without the support. And yeah, I just right away, having started into so many other tabletop systems and comparing it to this one, it really holds your hand, but in a way that you still feel like creative inspiration to customize your character the way you want to shape them. It guides you very well and inspires you.
Excellent. Eugenio?
I would just say, to the question of bringing current players into it, and I said this before, it's a great bridge game. The magic and the whimsy will bring fantasy players that might be intimidated by the depth of lore of a Star Trek or a Star Wars universe into this game. And, the familiar ideas of spaceships and space travel and different galaxy and solar systems is a thing that sci-fi players can latch onto and move them sort of into a fantasy world. I think it's a great bridge game that reaches out to sort of both ends of that spectrum.
Excellent. And Celeste, we'll go to you, and then after that we'll wrap up here. So I do want to say 3 copies of Burn Bryte are going to be given away at the end of the panel. So get in there and at chat. You are amazing, and for raising money, and get yourselves in there to enter the contest to win, and listen to the dulcet tones of Celeste tell us about Burn Bryte.
Yeah, so my pitch to any GMs out there wondering if, this is the game for you. Basically, I read the copy of the rules, which I read through pretty quickly because I couldn't put it down, maybe a week before my first game. And I felt great about being able to jump in and run it. And before this, too, I didn't have a ton of experience running games on Roll20. So honestly, that was a scarier part for me than this game, because the game felt so intuitive and so easy to jump into. And then when I did start, looking at it inside of Roll20 and clicking around, it was so easy. It was all in my head, the scariness that I thought it would be. Picking up the game was a delight because the game was so easy to understand. Roll20 was so easy to understand. It all went hand in hand here. And I will say, something I struggle with maybe as, a D&D DM, I've told so many stories over the course of so many years of playing that sometimes it's hard to think of an interesting thing to do next, like what's the next thing. This game, as I was reading through the rules, I had about 100,000 million ideas of a cool campaign to set in this game. Every time I would read a new paragraph and I was like, that would be such a good hook, or like that would be such a good adventure. So reading through this is a game that it flows like a waterfall. You're never fighting creativity because the world has so many cool hooks and options and stories to tell and stories to explore. So it is well worth your time, GMs, to learn how to run this game and get some friends together and just, burn bright, man.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for doing this. You all are amazing. So I think we are going to quickly go around the table, let people know just where they can find you on the internet. Everybody should watch Burn Bryte Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific time right here on twitch.tv/roll20app. That's APP. Burnbryte.com for other Burn Bryte stuff. There's a Discord. You can ask any of us on Twitter if we didn't get to your questions today. We're friendly people. So let's start with you, Darcy. Where can people find you?
Come find me on Twitter at Darcy L. Ross, and you can see the stuff that I'm doing with Monty Cook Games at Monty Cook Games, also on Twitter and Facebook, etc. And I'm in the Burn Bryte Discord, so I hope to see you there.
Excellent. Yes. And if you want that Discord link, I have it linked in my Twitter bio, and my Twitter name is my name. So it's right there, right here. Anyway, Nassim, where can people find you?
Find me on Twitter or Instagram at Nazgul, as well as the Venture Maidens Twitch channel Wednesday nights, playing on the show, and Sunday mornings doing some video game Let's Plays.
Excellent. And where can people find you, Jess?
You can find me mostly on Twitter at WriteJessR, but you can find all of the many things that I get up to on my website, writejess.com, which is WRITE, WriteJess.
Excellent. And Eugenia, where can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at DMJazzyHands. You can follow my actual play podcast at DND Last Refuge. And all the other links for things that I do are on my website, eugeniovargas.com. And actually, probably in about 30 to 45 minutes, I'll be streaming on my channel. So if you're not at another panel, come hang out while I play some Dragon Age Origins Awakening at twitch.tv/DMJazzyHands.
Excellent. And finally, Celeste, where can people find the great GM and game designer and podcaster and many, many other things that you are?
Yes, the best way just to connect with me. Again, my name is Celeste Conowich. Find me on Twitter at @cconowich, or if you want to see the back catalog of my work and all my schedules for Twitch, so Venture Maidens and Burn Bryte and everything else, check me out on my website, celesteconowich.com.
Excellent. Excellent. And I am James Introcaso. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in, who had questions. Come find us on Discord, on Twitter, and all of the other places we said you could. And we are out. Thank you so much.
All right, blast off,
Thank you.
everybody.
Blast off.
Blast off. All right,
Blast off.
Bye.